Dorte, CEO of Pila Pharma. We'll give you an applaud in advance. The show is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation to come back to Stockholm, and I have chosen to have this speech in English because it's also streamed, and it will of course be recorded, and we will share it so more of our shareholders, current and hopefully future shareholders, will have the opportunity to follow what I say. So we have to shift a little bit of mindset here. Before we heard about another very interesting project, but in a totally different area. Here we're talking about a healthcare project. So Pila Pharma is a company that I founded in 2014. We're based in Malmö in Sweden. And we work on developing a small molecule treatment of diabetes and obesity, as well as possibly a painful indication. And let's see here if I can, short intro to Pila. As I said, I founded the company in 2014. It has a long history before that. Back in 1999, I was engaged as a PhD student at Novo Nordisk, a big pharmaceutical company in Denmark. And there, by coincidence, I stumbled over a possible new mechanism of action on how to treat obesity, actually, but then obesity was not an indication. So we were focusing on developing a drug for diabetes, but obviously also with the obesity component. That was intended to be a big pharma project, but Novo changed their strategy and in 2008 decided not to develop small molecule tablets for treatment of anything because they were better at doing injectables.
Dorte, can you talk a little bit louder, please?
Difficult. Maybe I can move on the mic.
Yeah, put it higher.
See if I can do that. Yeah, it's difficult.
Thank you.
See if that works out. So I had written a patent on this new mechanism of action, on getting the patent or the IP rights for all of those molecules that could block this receptor that I now call the chili receptor. And I bought out that patent from Novo Nordisk and carried out then in my own setting the issuing of these patents. And that became the platform for starting Pila Pharma back in 2014. In 2011, we got the patents issued in the US to treat obesity. And in the 2013, we got the patents issued in the US and Europe to treat diabetes, both type 1 and type 2. And then we started the company and we in-licensed a molecule that could do the trick to block this chili receptor. And we got that in 2016, and in 2020 we actually bought it all out, so we own it all. But it's a little bit old. But we think it's a very good molecule. We listed 2 years ago at Nasdaq First North Growth Market. You probably have heard that. If some of you are, I know at least a few of you, I've seen your faces before. And as I said, we are looking at 2 different projects. Today I will mainly focus on our original diabetes obesity project because there's a lot of things happening in that space right now. And this is not a real pitch. It's more like a little bit of maybe a lecture, depending on how you will see it. But there's a lot of new things happening, and we are trying to keep up with what's happening in the market and how can we place us here and how can that be good for Pila. And I want you to convey that message today primarily so that you can see that actually the world is putting itself more in front of us than it was before. So it's, I think, overall good for us. But here I have a picture of our small tablets in the first bottle, in a bottle from our first experiments. We have done 2 clinical experiments in persons with diabetes after we purchased the molecule. And overall, and then we have also recently done a 3-month toxicology package in 2 animal species to see and explore if the safety was all right to move into longer trials. And we came out, they were actually quite delayed, which I was disappointed about, the collaborators, but the data came out really well. We had no side effects on very, very high doses in 2 different species. So we are okay to move on to longer trials in men. And that means that we have good preclinical safety in animals, and that is a prerequisite to move into humans in longer trials. We have good clinical safety in humans in up to 1 month's duration on a dose of 4 milligram 2 times per day. And in the last study we conducted was 1 month in persons with diabetes and overweight. We saw, and that has actually not been really toned by us before, but we had one very highly statistically significant effect, and that was on reduction of a marker for heart failure. So this Chile story or principle, the main thing that is reported in the literature is an effect on cardiovascular function, and thereby probably extending lifespan, because you don't die as fast as otherwise. And we have seen now a biomarker for cardiovascular death is highly reduced after only 1 month's treatment. The same study, we also did what we call an oral glucose tolerance test. So you offer the persons a drink with a lot of glucose, and then you measure the glucose afterwards, as well as the insulin that is secreted by the body. And there we saw an improved insulin secretion and a reduced blood glucose after 2 hours. We didn't see anything on the fasting during that study, but we have 3 parameters. One is fasting, one is the 2-hour blood glucose, and then the HbA1c, that is the long-term measure for glucose over a longer period. And there, this was also not statistically significant, but you can see, now I'll see if I can use this one. Here is the graph from that study. So before treatment and after treatment, there was at least a trend for a reduction in HbA1c. And if you look at the individual plots from the individual persons, it's quite clear that there is something going on. So with that, we decided we will move on and go towards longer studies and then explore higher doses. And then in parallel to the preclinical studies we did last year, or actually just got the last report here a week ago or so, we applied and got an orphan drug designation by the FDA in the US to treat an orphan, so as a rare disease, small number of persons with this condition, but that can give, if we can market a product for that, that can give us data protection of the molecule in the US. And of course, reduce suffering for some people. It is a condition where they get flares of really intense pain. And persons here from Sweden who have heard about this project, they are writing to me and calling me to say they really want that drug. So I'm really, really eager to move that forward. It has been for kind of, strategic reasons that we embarked on that project, but it seems that there is a big human need for it also. Okay. But let's go back to diabetes. And again, I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening there now. So this is, and you may see that this is a table that I have made myself. Here you have the different treatments of diabetes, and then you have what you measure them on, how to use them, efficacy, how well do they work, do they have side effects, how do you take them, is it by injection or tablet, and what is the cost? So when I started working in this space 20 years back, doing a new diabetes treatment was actually more or less, you needed to have efficacy on diabetes, obviously, otherwise it's not a diabetes drug. And then it was a matter, is it a tablet or an injection? But then came other products that began to show reduction on obesity. And here I have inserted ourselves as the blue because I expect us to have. But then obesity, reduction of body weight became a parameter also in selection which compounds. And then there was one product of this TCD group that had increased death. So the FDA asked all the companies to do big clinical trials to look for clinical effect on cardiovascular function. And there, most of the drugs came out that they were not different from placebo, but 2 groups, first the SGLT2s and then the GLP-1s, came out that they could actually save lives. And that's really what it's all about. When we are working our whole life in this industry. It's to be, come up with something that can improve the lives of people, reduce the burden of disease, prolong their life, and also the life that you have before you eventually have to go to heaven should be good. You should be active. You should, have the possibility to walk and not be dependent on medications. So 2 products set the bar for a new world, and that was SGLT2s and GLP-1s. But I was happy about that. Not that we could do these big outcome trials, but as I said before, we have done it by looking at biomarkers, and we've seen positive signs for cardiovascular function there. But I think we can benchmark to that. When I embarked on this project way back, I was also working on Novo's semaglutide, so the big project that is now very successful both as a diabetes treatment as obesity treatment. So I knew that product very well. And still I thought that if I was right with this new mechanism of action, we can be superior in having more positive effects. The trick, of course, was can we find a molecule that is safe enough where we can dose so high so we can get all these positive effects. But so far, so good. We are still, nothing has stopped the project still, so I'm still on that path. I think we can be on par with GLP-1s and maybe better on efficacy. And then, of course, be a small tablet. Okay, move on to, just to say that what's happening now is really this. Obesity has become an indication in many countries, and there's an increased awareness of that obesity is a problem now and will become a very big problem in the future. We are moving towards a stage where approximately half of all the world's persons are becoming overweight or even obese, and that leads to a number of diseases, including diabetes, that will be very costly for society if you have to treat all, and of course be a lot of burden for the individual patient. So there is an increased, insight into that it's smart to see if you can tackle obesity before it develops into severe illnesses. And I completely agree with that. So, but that's where it's moving. So we are moving away from, any kind of tablets and injectables or tablets. It's going to be, can you change body weight? And this summer at the American Diabetes meeting, we attended that, and there was presented some data, really, really interesting data from Eli Lilly. They have now, presented data in overtly obese diabetic patients. I mean, the higher body weight you have, the bigger decrease you can get, of course. If you are lean, you shouldn't go below normal weight. But in persons with very high body weight, they now have shown that they can get up to, here it's 28, almost towards 30% body weight reduction in 1 year. That's completely, groundbreaking. It's going to change everything from now on. And that means that this whole diabetes project, I still think we can do something in diabetes, but obesity is going to drive this area from now on. Let's see here if we can. And I brought this slide just to show you that if you are a doctor and you're going to choose a medication for diabetes, it's not uncomplicated. There are a lot of factors. But I tried to summarize what this is about. Before, if you had diabetes diagnosed, you were advised to get up on a bike, do exercise, and to change your eating behaviors. And that's still the first advice. And 30% can actually correct that diabetes by that, so that's good news. But if you can't, then before you were put on cheaper tablets, metformin and so on. But that's gone now. So it's straight on to some of these products that have been in these big trials where you have either effect on cardiovascular function or effect on obesity. I think that's, again, the right thing because you have to treat the base condition of people. But that also means that this will narrow in to the companies that have these data packages. And of course, this is what the big companies work on, showing that they have effect on both. And that means that it's going to be these GLP-1 analogs from some of the bigger companies. Let's see here. So this is my cartoon. And I think this is how the world is going to change. So we have diabetes. I'm not allowed to move, so I have to use this one. Diabetes treatment is approximately $50 billion market, and those who have invested in, for instance, Novo Nordisk know that that is a profitable business to develop molecules that can treat obesity. If you can then take these molecules that have already been developed and put them into a bigger market of obesity that is approximately double as big, according to the forecast, I think it will be actually 3 times or 4 times as big, then it's really good business. It's also really good for all the persons who need help, because now there will be focus on actually correcting what is going wrong early before it develops into something more dramatic like diabetes. But this is, this is a financial meeting, so we're here to see not only do we want to do good and be scientific smart, but we also want to make money. And this is an absolutely attractive area to get into. And there's a rush going now. And according to me and Gustav, we think these are our, 2 or 3 cents. We see that this market will be dominated by Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk. So if you want a low-risk investment in this space, those are the guys to look for. High-risk investment, that's us, but bigger gain. And what will happen is that to get this maximal effect, you need probably to combine these GLP-1 analogs with something else. And as you saw before, Eli Lilly has developed a molecule that tackles 3 different receptors, and that's a really complicated, expensive molecule to make, but it has a big, good effect. But they will be looking for, I think, and they are already started, other products that have a potential for an additive effect on obesity. And then I personally believe that if you really want to tackle and treat all these patients or persons with obesity, the market is, it's half of the world's population, they say, it's enormous amount of, and with those products that are available now, they are quite expensive. So it's only a fraction of people who can actually get access to that. And for sure, our healthcare authorities will not be able to sponsor use of very expensive treatments. So personally, I believe, and I think that's also hopefully water on our mill, you need to come up with a cost-effective solution. You have to have good effect, but you have to be able to, modulate the price so that it can get out to more people. That doesn't mean you are not going to make money. It's like, think about the big pens. They go out to a lot, but you can still make money on them. But it's going to require another business model in this diabetes space. But that's just, according to me, in 10 years we can see if I was right. The race has already started. Here in August there were 3 acquisitions, first by Novo Nordisk, then by Eli Lilly, then by Novo Nordisk again. And the price tags are around $1 billion for such a product. Total, because it's an upfront, smaller upfront, and then you have to show that it's good. And also here it's 2, and this last one had a relatively small upfront, but the total value was comparable to this one. So it's a lot of money in these transactions if you have something that works well and has a good overall business. If they review that this can be a good addition to their pipeline, there's a lot of money in that. And of course, that is what we are now trying to make sure that we are in there, under their radar. And if they are looking for a new project, we could be one of them. Yeah, so I just want to move on too fast. As I said, we have started this journey with a patent on obesity and obesity-related diseases and disorders. That was the background from my invention. It was obesity treatment, so I'm very happy to be back in that space. And we're going to focus even more on how can we demonstrate a potential effect on obesity. And just a little bit of the receptor we work on is this chili receptor here, and it has some sister receptors, all with plant activators. It's more for you to remember. And where are they located? These TRP receptors are located on sensory nerves that come from the body, go up to the brain and tell, do you have pain or how is your metabolism going? And it's going up through this nervous vagus. Here, I can't get it closer, but you see this blue line going up to the brain. And also these receptors I have told that before, but last year in December, a professor from California who cloned this receptor got the Nobel Prize. So it's the importance of this receptor in pain and inflammation has been lifted to Nobel Prize. My addition is I think it's important in metabolism and obesity. And overall, we want people to live longer, and in mice who don't have this receptor, they actually live longer. So I think a molecule like ours that can reduce the activity of this receptor, overall, of course, the goal is that people should live longer. We'll see in many years going forward. I'm close to, but a little bit of the evidence. Mice without the receptor have also been shown to not put on so much body weight. There's a little bit of conflicting evidence in that area, so we will have to see what happens in the clinic. I was looking in our files, and we actually have a publication from the previous owner who looked into chronic cough. But they had also done a study on lungs that were intended for transplantation but couldn't be used. And they have looked at the nervus vagus, where our receptors are sitting. Is there an effect on that? And here we actually see a dose-dependent reduction in percent inhibition, and we have a dose-dependent decrease of activity ex vivo, as we call it. So with that, we hope that will in vivo suppress food intake in people. And if you want to regulate body weight, it's either what comes in or what goes out. So either you have to reduce the amount of calories you take in, or you have to increase how much you burn off by exercise and so on. And if you think about, this is also data from our molecule, another study, they did something else to look at safety. And this is 2 weeks, after 2 weeks dosing with our molecule, those researchers said, no, there's no difference in mean temperature. The biggest side effect of these drugs have been increased temperature. So some drugs have failed because they induce too much heat, fever, above 39.5. But ours is different here. We have a molecule that behaves differently. But a little bit of temperature increase would not be bad, right? A little bit, I'm getting into more exercise habits, and it's about getting up on a bike just 10 minutes in the morning, then you can start changing things. And I have found an old physiology paper, and this is actually 10 minutes biking exercise in healthy volunteers. And you can appreciate that the increase in temperature is comparable to this, probably a little bit higher. But with that, we think that this eventually increase in temperature is actually physiological or actually good for you. And with that, we are now intending to move on to a dose-finding study. The next plan was to go to a clinical phase 2B, but we need first to explore higher doses. We need to see that we can get up in those doses where we can get a good reduction of glucose, but also body weight, because this is what it's all about. So we're preparing that right now, and also this a small proof of concept trial in this pain. But and the pain, just a small picture so you can remember, these persons have this terrible condition where they have a lot of pain on a daily basis, and I really want to help them. It can be an extra market opportunity for us, but it can also give us data that if we have a diabetes/obesity drug that can also alleviate pain, it's actually unique in that area. And people with diabetes, this is a recent Danish publication, it's shown that people with diabetes have more pain than average. This is the phase 2B. I'm going to jump a little bit fast forward. We want to have a dose reduction in glucose regulation and also in body weight on the highest doses. And for that, we're going to do a dose escalation. That's the next step, as I said before. And this is the finishing slide. I used this slide in 2016, and I got a feedback from people that they didn't like it because it looked ugly, but it is actually what this is all about. Obesity, when it becomes out of control, leads to, and it's not type 2 diabetes that leads to diabetes, it's like this obesity condition leads to a number of conditions that are not nice to live with and will be very costly. And in the scientific literature, at least, there is evidence that if you block the chili receptor, you can have a positive effect on all. And with that, I still believe that we can be superior in efficacy as compared to the blockbusters GLP-1 analogs. So I hope you will stay shareholders or buy more shares or join us as shareholders. Thank you. A bit all time.
Thank you, Pila Pharma. Maybe you have a summary slide or something?
No, this is my last slide, just so
Okay.
people to remember what the world is going towards.
It's a brutal
getting there.
slide to do
Yeah, I know.
moderation to.
We can go back to something nicer, maybe here.
That's great. A general question. Look at Novo Nordisk. They were trading at 200 Danish, and that's your old company, is it?
It is.
200 Danish in 2021, and now it's 630 Danish. I mean, I know it's so big that the Danish Riksbank has to look into the Novo Nordisk schedule for paying dividends and what they do with the share, because it affects the Danish. Novo Nordisk is larger than Denmark. It's by far the largest Nordic company. But my question is, give us just a feel for why did the link between diabetes treatment and obesity treatment rest almost, hidden until 2021? It must have been known for a long time when you were in Novo Nordisk, but it exploded in the last 2 years.
I mean, my invention here is not my own kind of, I was hired after my PhD into a department called obesity pharmacology. There was a lot of interest in tackling obesity back there 20 years back at Novo Nordisk, and I also joined a lot of scientific networks. And those researchers who've now come up with this idea about triple, combination treatment, they have worked on that since. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to come forward with the right combination. There were many candidates for treatment of obesity that failed due to lack of efficacy or safety. So it's been a kind of a graveyard. There are a few compounds that have been approved, but it's not been really. Then came the diabetes treatments, semaglutide and liraglutide, for instance, from Novo. Then it was possible to suddenly lower body weight below 5%. That was kind of the magic level. And with the latest semaglutide that works longer, you could push it down to 10%. And everybody was super happy about that, because that was, But, sometimes it takes clinical data to convince the world. And that's why I brought this slide from this summer. Because that was just, in 15, I think it was, the first molecule was shown to prevent cardiovascular disease. It was kind of the same thing. It's just simply, disruptive. It changes the setting completely. And by, finding out that you can tackle severe obesity if you combine different modes of actions, that's the trick. It's simple. In pain treatment, it has been known for years if you want to have a good pain-killing effect, you have to combine different things. But sometimes in the different areas, they don't crosstalk. So in diabetes, it's been like you wanted one drug with one action and no side effects. So I can't tell you why that has happened, but clinical data, obviously, you cannot disregard good clinical data.
And also, still in 2020, the link between diabetes treatment and obesity treatment was known, but there was no successful case. So when that came, now I'm guessing that came with Novo in 2021.
I think Novo and Lilly have been parallel, so you cannot distinguish, but I know Novo more than that, and I think they've done a brilliant work. But it's also clear that, as I said in the beginning, it's also a competitive advantage to have more good effects, right? So when Novo, they actually first got effect on body weight on an insulin. Instead of increasing body weight, they showed that it was, they said decreasing, but it was like 2 kilos. So I think actually it was just neutral. But with that, it's a competitive advantage to be able to not increase body weight. And when you then start having molecules that can decrease, and they saw that in the clinical diabetes trials and decided, okay, this can be a standalone product, we'll do it in obese patients, and then the effect was bigger. And now we see, okay, you can get to 10, maybe 15% reduction with GLP-1 analogs alone. That's not bad. But if you're really obese, it's not enough. And now, so the new thing is this, they want to combine, and therefore hopefully, I hope we can be more attractive to them than, so when I talk to them,
you could put up the slide with the Novo, Lilly, Novo deals.
Yes, absolutely. So just a little bit on when can we make money on this project. Before we went to the stock exchange 2 years ago, we had talked to all the farmers and said, okay, when are you interested in a partnership? Because we will get cash flow when we get a partner. We will not take this all the way to market. It's simply too expensive, I think. So we need a partner, and we have been on the lookout for that for a long time, and they know us and they like us, but they want to see more data. First they said, we want to see phase 2B data in diabetes. And that's why we went to the stock exchange and had this plan. And we still have the intention to do that. But now it seems that this dose-finding study, if there's just a trend on the body weight, then we might be able to. Maybe not of this size, because these products might be better, I don't know. But it's, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, this is, and this slide tells the story, this is big pharma territory.
Yeah, now they
Why did this asset end up with you guys?
As I said, it was a strategic decision not to focus on tablets. It was not so much the mechanism. I think my scientific colleagues, I presented it twice and they all liked it. And now I've met with the big guys again, and they now acknowledge the mechanism of action. They told me in June. So that was, one of my own goals, is show that I'm right. Now the big pharmas tell me they acknowledge the mode of action.
So they wanted to stay with the injector.
Yes, that was from.
But at the same time, if a tablet does the job,
yeah,
that's the choice because it's easier.
Yes, exactly. And I think, honestly, if you want, a tip, I don't know. I think if I'm going to buy shares, and I might in one of these two, I would go for Lilly actually, because they have tablets. Novo doesn't have tablets. They're going to build that up now, and it's maybe a little bit too late. So Pfizer has a small molecule GLP-1 analog in development, and so does Lilly. And I think that will be the future. So hopefully Novo has that in their pipeline somewhere, and they haven't told us about it. But I personally believe that it will be small molecules, and if you have a tablet, then you can put more compounds into the same tablet. It's a little bit more difficult if it's in a solution for injection. Then it's just difficult to mix. So Novo still is focused on, they have a tablet with this, but it's still a peptide they put into a tablet via specific complicated technology. Very big tablet and so on, but it works, right? But they don't have small molecule acids. Yeah.
Just a clarification, I think you touched upon it. Your drug has another mode of action than the GLP-1 analogs.
Yes.
So you expect there to be an additive effect if you combine the two?
Yes. That's what we are now trying to look into. I mean, we have, of course, always known that we should be add-on to something else. But since the GLP-1 analogs only recently became available as a tablet and also have been injectables before and are expensive, we have never really thought that we would be add-on to GLP-1. But that has changed now with this. Either you have heart problems or cardiovascular problems or obese. So now GLP-1s will be first-line treatments, and therefore we now are thinking about how would we work as add-on to GLP-1. I personally believe that if you have, the theory says if you have two different mechanisms that each individually work in the same direction, you will get a better effect. So that's my expectation, actually. But we don't have data on it. But we are looking into, maybe we should do a study or two to look at that, but that's money, of course.
My second question is the validity of the patent.
That's a good question. We have the We have two sets of patents at the moment. We have those that I showed you. Those are around the target, and they are old, and they will expire in 2025, 2026, and then it will be open for all with all sorts of molecules. Then we have our own molecule, and that is very old. That's from Bayer. So that is about to expire, and that is, of course, the drawback, and that's why we are probably not going to get a $2 billion deal. But we have a plan, and we have a plan for patenting this molecule in specific indications. We had submitted a patent on that we expected to get issued, and then you have patent protection until 32 or something. But I pulled it back in April, because with the publication of that patent application, before it's even issued, we also had to publish the structure of the molecule. And I think that's probably the most well-kept secret so far, at least. We have a very unique chemical structure of a molecule that can inhibit this receptor without causing severe side effects. So I want to keep that structure to ourselves for a little while more, while we generate data on pain. That was, of course, and now also obesity. And then we'll resubmit. And then we will hope that nobody caught up the structure or something. Of course, there's a risk in that. So that's one thing. We want to have the indications covered with data before we submit. And the other thing is, the later we submit, the longer it holds.
Quick last question, quick last answer.
Why do you think that your drug has any effect on erythromelalgia?
Well, that's really another story than what we talked about yesterday. So erythromelalgia is a disease where you get, it's actually, the disease itself has another background. It's either hereditary, where you get an, increased activity of these sensory afferent nerves that causes pain. And then as a secondary effect, you get an upregulation of these TRPV1 receptors, contributing to the pain. So we are not really treating erythromelalgia, we are treating pain in erythromelalgia. And as you saw before, TRPV1 as a target in pain, that is well established. It's well recognized. And the problem there has been that nobody has had a molecule that was both effective and safe. So the other compounds have failed. So if we are successful with that TRPV1 or this pain treated, we also have some other types of companies that are interested, but for that project. But they want to see that it works because it's not with safety problems. So we have two bets, and maybe some of the bigger companies, they have both pain and diabetes projects. So we are focusing on them probably.
Time flies, but
yes.
I'll give myself the last question. Where are you in the dose-finding study? I would call that phase 2A. Is that starting, or is it pending funding to start?
As many of you know, I have I'm quite a cost-effective kind of person. I hope you would appreciate that. I've gone a long way on low funds, and we continue to do that. So when we decided that this was the way forward here in the spring, I had some interesting discussions going on, and I wanted to wait it, but that takes forever. And then we got the message that our tablets that we made in 2021 were okay to use. So I turned to some private investors we have already and said, can you give us a convertible loan? It's actually like a pre-subscription for a later emission. And so we got 1.5 million. It's not a lot, but it's enough to prepare 2 trial applications. So at the moment, we have kind of restarted maybe two-thirds of the clinical teams, and they are working on writing protocols and getting those documents ready, and we hope to submit. My target was October. It's probably going to be November. So we are in the preparation phase here. Yeah. And we hope to get approval for both studies. This will be in Sweden. This will be in UK. And so we can start recruiting after in January, but then we have to, start up the site. So February probably we could start recruiting.
Okay, so
and
let's assume you get enough funds over 2023 here. You start in 2024. When can you guess when the dose-finding study would finish and publish?
I would rather start with this one, maybe.
Okay.
This one can be, given that we can find persons with a condition who wants to participate, and I believe so, it would be finished within 7 months from start. So that will be over the summer. And then there might be a potential for a partnership in the pain space if we can split the asset.
And
then
is this one has prior one over that one?
No, I think right now the obesity, and that's, I mean, I think this one, this is where the big money is. So I guess for the investors or shareholders, we must focus on seeing if we can get this one right. This one, we will know how far up we can go in dose before the summer, I think. But readout of the efficacy, so glucose and body weight, but it will only be few patients. But we should see a trend, but that will be in a year from now or before Christmas. So within a year, if you join us, hopefully we can make something big.
Dorte, well, if you're around for the coffee break, we could have a small roundtable there with those of you who want to explore more.
Absolutely.
Pila Pharma, Dorte.
Tack.